webinar. Hello everyone, I am Sebastian Cater. I'm Head of UK Theatre and Workforce Development, and your facilitator today is Eileen Bellot, who is a writer, director and artistic director of Quest Life. Today's webinar is, as you can hopefully see on the screen, good, bad and ugly stress. Ironically, we have been experiencing a little bit of it just in the run up to going live. So thank you for bearing with us, and we'll be walking the talk. Just to give you a brief introduction to Eileen, Eileen is a writer, director and artistic director of Quest Life. She's passionate about making work that reflects the diversity of the human experience and collaborative working across art forms. Eileen supports strategic thinking that generates innovative ways of increasing access to the arts for all. She has taken on leadership roles through running an award-winning arts and wellbeing charity for 17 years, public speaking, community advocacy and board memberships, including Tamasha Theatre and Stage Sight. As an advocate for lifelong learning, Eileen regularly facilitates training and workshops. Her expertise in holistic wellbeing and the arts has generated invitations on public speaking platforms such as TEDx, BBC Radio 4 Women's Hour, BBC Breakfast, TV, LBC Radio and WOW Festival. So we're super excited to have Eileen with us today. But before we launch in, I'm just going to do a brief summary of some of the things that we're going to be covering today, just to make sure that you're in the right room. Hopefully you are. Some of the things that you'll get out of today, we're going to help help you have an increased awareness of different types of stress. You'll have an understanding of the body's reaction to stress. Oh, there goes my light. It really is live today. I'm not stressing. One of the outcomes of today is you will start to identify stress triggers. Maybe losing your webinar light may be one of them. And finally, develop a range of tools to build resilience. Before we start, just a few housekeeping notes. Just to say the webinar will last around 90 minutes. And so we won't be able to hear or see you, but you can ask questions using the Q&A box and the chat box as well. You can ask questions anonymously, or you can put your name, either is fine. And also you can sort of get those questions at the top of the surface if you see someone else has typed something that you agree with. So you can just click on that. We are recording this, as I might have mentioned, and once this has been captioned, we'll be putting it live on our website, theatremeansbusiness.info. And we have Miriam on hand to handle technical issues. Just to briefly explain why we're doing these webinars, obviously we've been through some pretty tumultuous times in the last year. And so SOLT and UK Theatre wanted to help the sector in relation to mental health and well-being. So we've programmed this series of 10 webinars, and they split into 5 category releases. 5 of them are for everyone. They're about supporting your personal and professional well-being. And we've got sessions including managing stress, staying resilient in uncertain times, and secular mindfulness, for example. And there's also 5 that we've done which are more about supporting the professional well-being of others. So those are really focused on managers and leaders. And some of the themes include nurturing resilient teams, mitigating the effects of racism, and strategies for organizational recovery. You can find out all about them on theatremeansbusiness.info. Thank you to everyone for joining us. We appreciate everyone who's bought tickets. I'd also like to take a moment just to thank our sponsors, UK Theatre sponsors, and we couldn't do this without them. They are Ecclesiastical, Spectrix, Theatre Tokens, and Tizers. Also, just to let you know that any net profits from these webinars will be going towards the Theatre Artists Fund. It was created about a year ago, and it provides emergency financial aid to struggling theatre freelancers. And if you're watching this as a recording and you wanted to make a donation, you can just visit the website, which is theatreartists, all one word, .fund/donate. Finally, just to say, SOLT and UK Theatre, we're the UK's leading membership organisations, and being a member of SOLT and UK Theatre enables us to provide these webinars, amongst other things. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of government and local authority lobbying we've been doing over the last year. There's a whole range of other initiatives that we provide, so do check out our website, uktheatre.org. And also being a member enables us to do things like theatremeansbusiness.info. If you wanted to find out more about being a member, you can visit uktheatre.org/membership. And if you are a member already, thank you so much for your support. That's enough from me. I am now going to hand over to Eileen. Thank you, Eileen. We're really looking forward to this session.
Hello, everyone. Great. So as Sebastian's told you, we're already experiencing some good stress. What I really wanted to do today is just really kind of explore stress. It's almost like taking it out of a handbag and just unpeeling it and seeing what it looks like, and also how it impacts on us on an everyday basis. And I want to just start off with the premise that to say everybody experiences stress, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. And the important thing about that is to recognize also that what one person calls stressful, another person might not. What might cause you stress today might not cause you stress tomorrow. So it's a very kind of changeable experience, is stress. And we're really wanting to look today at how it changes. Why is it that something that will make you stressful today won't make me stressful tomorrow? So we're also going to be looking at what's your threshold, what's your stress threshold. So I'm going to ask Miriam. Miriam, could you start the slides for me, please? And we're going to look at the first slide. Just give Miriam a minute to do that. And while she's doing that, what I'd like you to think about in our first brainstorm. Lovely. And can we take the second slide, please, Miriam? Now, the reason why I'm asking Miriam to do this is because we were having all kinds of interesting things happen today, and I do not want to push the technology barrier more than it needs to. So this is why I'm choosing, see, this is a stress reduction choice. So that you don't lose me, I'm going to make sure that the slides are being conveyed by somebody else. So Miriam, in the chat, can you please put the first link for a little exercise we're going to do? Because I want to see what everybody's understanding of stress is. So in the chat, there's going to be a link, and I'd like you to click onto that link, please. Once it's in the chat, and it will open another screen in your browser. And in that, I'd like you to please write in what you think stress is. So Miriam, can we keep that answer garden screen open, please? So what I'm inviting you to do is to type into the dialog box what you think stress is. You can either click submit or enter once you've submitted it. And if you see something that you recognize as something that you think is a stressful experience, you can repeat that as well. So Miriam, can you click submit on your screen, please, on the tab? And then we should start to see, click to continue. Wonderful, we've got a few things already happening here. And what happens with this, the more people repeat a response, the bigger that particular response becomes. It is anonymous, so it'd be great. I'm sure there are more than 3 people in the room. So if you could all, and again, Miriam, if you could keep submitting, click for me, then we should see it all grow. So the number 1 at the moment is discomfort. And Miriam, if you can just every now and then click on it, and we can see some of the things that are coming up. So at the moment, the popular ones are discomfort and anxiety and pressure. And again, if you see one that you recognize as your definition of stress, or another definition of stress that you think works, then you can also copy that and put that into the chat. And you can see what's starting to happen now. Discomfort, being overwhelmed, anxiety are the top 3 that people are recognizing as stress. It looks like anxiety is overtaking. There's some interesting other ones. Let's have a look at some of the other ones we've got here. Sense of hopelessness. Yes. Psychological response, reacting to pressure. Pressure's come up quite a few times. Pressure, concern, pressure again, response to pressure. There's lots around pressure. Being beyond normal. Yes, that's when something is changing. Lack of clarity is really another one. Tension, these are physical responses. So you can see here, excessive strain. So you can see here the definitions are kind of adhering to some kind of threshold where something is no longer manageable, where we are now going into experiencing physical symptoms of stress. Thank you, Miriam. So we can hold that page and we can go back to the slides, please. And let's go to the next slide. And this is the official definition of stress. It says stress occurs when there is a mismatch between the demands placed on us and our perceived ability to cope with demand. Now, I'm going to keep coming back to that word perceived because it's very much a key point of understanding stress. And this is why when I said at the beginning, what we can feel, what isn't stressful today may be stressful tomorrow. And that is all about how we are feeling our ability to cope with stress at any given point. That is the key thing that helps us to know whether we are able to manage a stress or not. And so that's why you've got the kind of scales, because it's so changeable. It really goes up and down all the time. And it is a bit like the hormones that kind of drive the stress response within us. So I want to take a look. Can we have the next slide, please, Miriam? I want to take a look at the definition or the key things, 6 key points that the health and safety executive say are the main reasons for stress, particularly at work. Now, the health and safety executive is a great resource, actually, if you are looking at stress and thinking about how you can manage stress for yourself or for your team. What are the guidelines and recommendations for stress and working with stress in the workplace? So we've got these kind of key issues, key factors, and the first one being demand. So you might be saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm not able to cope with the demands of this job." Those are the kind of things as somebody who might be managing a team could be looking out for. Are my staff feeling that they are able to manage the work that they are doing? Are you yourself as an individual, are you feeling that you can cope with the demands that the job is putting on you? Now, there'll be periods where it feels fine and it's the same job you're doing. But the next day, you might be doing exactly the same task. And because you're not feeling that you're able to cope with the demands, your response to that, to those tasks will be different. And the next one is control. And that's really about how much control do you have on your particular working circumstances? How much, what controls are you putting in place? Are you able to control the environment that you work in? Are you able, there are some places where people have to wear uniforms. Are you able to control what you wear? And is it comfortable what you're wearing? Is what you're wearing actually creating discomfort? And particularly, I'm going to mention this for women who might be menopausal. Because again, sometimes, particularly if you are in a place where you're having to wear some kind of uniform, and that uniform might not be the most comfortable, or the fabrics that it's made in might increase your sweat factors, that is a loss of control. And so that's another way that you can think about control. How much control am I able to have? If you feel that you don't have much control, that can sometimes increase your stress levels. The other thing is support. Are you receiving the type of support that you need to do your job well, to explore your creativity in the role that in your job that you're doing? What support systems have you got in place to manage your work? The other thing to think about is relationships. Are you having troubles with relationships at work, outside of work? Are you being bullied in any way? Do you feel that there are enough support systems again about how people relate to each other in the job? Are you actually isolated in your working life, and not able to build relationships with your colleagues? The other thing that you also again is understanding your role and responsibilities. Do you fully understand what is expected of you in your role? How often do you have appraisals, for example, to be able to actually look at your role and discuss that with your line managers? Change. Do you feel that you are engaged in the way that your organization is being developed? How have you managed COVID? How have you managed any changes to your working life that may have come up since COVID? Um, did you if you were furloughed, how did you manage that change? If you've had to start working from home, how did you manage that? Were you able to create a working environment that allowed you to be productive and to be your best? So those are the kind of key things that you can think about when you're thinking about stress in the workplace. And as I said, in the end, we'll be sharing some resources and toolkits from the Health and Safety Executive, or HSE, that might be able to support you in that role. So other things to think about again is skills and experience, age, disabilities, a whole host of other things to think about outside of these 6 core causes for stress at work. Well, one of the important thing, particularly if you are managing a team of any kind of size, is to really always talk to your employees about these 6 key issues. Listen out in conversations for those 6 key issues. How are people feeling about that at any given time? Use meetings, team meetings, as an opportunity to explore these issues as well, so that you're always feeling that, and your team's feeling that their well-being is being thought of. Can we take the next slide, please? How many people sometimes feel like this, completely fogged out, haven't got a clue about what it is they're supposed to do, not able to even move forward. And we're really trying to avoid that kind of zombied out, kind of present but not present state of well-being. So what I want to do next is to take a look at what stress really is. Can we take the next slide, please? Okay, so the human body has had very little evolution for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And we're pretty much the same as the caveman who came along many centuries ago. Can we take the next slide, please? So our little caveman had the same stress response that we have. And the stress response is very much, you may have all heard of fight or flight, and it's pretty much the same as when we had our little caveman. So in the days of the caveman, his fight or response around stress was very much about, okay, there's a lion running up towards me right now. What am I going to do? Am I going to stand and fight and save the day and maybe have something to eat at the end of the day? Or am I going to run out of this situation as fast as I can? So that's the same response to stress that we have had for centuries upon centuries. Can we take the next slide, please? So today we might not have lions walking down the high street or within our gardens that are about to jump out and frighten us. So we have modern stressors like, am I going to be able to pay my bills today? Another stressful situation could be, do you all remember your very, very first kiss that you might have had? And if you remember the kind of excitement you may have had, the butterflies that you may have had, the anticipation of what that first kiss might even be like, you still experience the same stress response. You were still being triggered in exactly the same way. The same things that happened to you, the caveman, are happening to you today. We just have different stress triggers than what we had in the past. Can we take the next slide, please? So we're looking at now what actually happens. We've got the same stress response. What actually happens to us during the body's stress response? So one of the things that happens is our breathing becomes faster and shallower because we're getting ready to decide whether we're going to run away from the bills or the tiger, or whether we're going to stand and fight. And deciding or freeze. Deciding to do either will increase your heart rate and the blood circulation speeds up around your body, so that we increase and that the impact of that is that our blood pressure increases. Now the liver releases all kinds of sugar and other stores into the blood system for more energy, because again we're going to decide whether we're going to run away from the tiger or whether we're going to stand and fight. Can we take the next slide, please? Another thing that happens to our body during the stress response is we start to sweat. And we're sweating because we're trying to cool our system down. We're trying to really calm ourselves down, again, ready to decide whether we're going to run or stand still. Once we're doing that again, the blood circulation to the brain and the muscle increases to allow us to think a little bit more clearly and allow us to get ready if we're going to need to run or fight. Okay? So in that process, the muscles also tense up, getting ready for action. So there's a lot of activity happening in the body, and the body's saying, well, listen, I need to decide what's the most important thing right now. I don't need to worry about digesting my food right now. So I'm going to slow down the functions that aren't important in this fight or flight response. So you'll find that your digestive system slows down. Can we have the next slide, please? So our hearing becomes a little bit acute because we need to just check out what is going on around. It becomes amplified, and we kind of like have a much wider range of hearing, but also really very, very clear hearing very close by. The other things that happen is that our pupils dilate, and they dilate to allow us to take in a lot of the visual information around us. And lastly, but not least, the other thing that is impacted is our hormone levels. And hormones like adrenaline are released in the body again to help the body's system in our response, a stress response. So there's an awful lot of things going on in our body. Once we're standing there, we think that nothing's happening, but an awful lot is happening very, very quickly, all at the same time, so that we can assess a given situation. So that's really what's happening to our body as we go along with the stress response. Can we have the next slide, please? So if all these things are happening as a matter of the normal stress response, why should we worry? Anyone got any suggestions in the chat why we should worry? What are the key things that we should worry about? If stress is the body's natural response, why do we need to worry? Any ideas on that? Anything coming up in the chat? It takes a toll on our body, absolutely right. to respond to the danger. That's right. It has a negative impact on our physical selves. It's a question here. I'm wondering how fast all those responses in the body appear. Anyone got any idea how fast it appears in our body? I'm gonna throw that question back out to you all and ask you to think about the last time you had a stressful experience, and think about how quickly, or which one of those responses were you most aware of, and how quickly did that particular response take place? Again, can we have some responses in the chat from that? It says, when you respond on the chat, yes, please click on the panelists and attendees so that your response can be shared with everyone. Okay, within seconds, somebody says. Yeah. The stomach drop feeling is immediate. Yes. It's like this shock system, like speeding up of the heart rate. Somebody recognized that one. It is all so quick. It really, and it also depends on the type of stress you're experiencing as well, and how long that particular stress factor has been in your life. All of those things will be an impact on how you experience any given type of stress. Can we have the next slide, please? So, the signs and symptoms of stress can be broken down into these 4 particular types of reaction. So you can have stress that you experience as physical, and some people have already talked about physical stress, like the feeling hot or sweaty, or the feeling of your stomach dropping. And then also aches and pains in your back is another kind of physical symptom of stress. Anyone, again, let's use the chat and let's brainstorm this. Any ideas about other types of physical experiences people might have to stress? Lack of appetite. I wonder, sometimes, yeah, bad stomach, yeah, nausea, excessive tiredness. Nausea's come up again. Headaches, tension of the jaw, IBS, absolutely. Tension of the jaw is quite a common one. Another common physical one, obviously, is the back. A lot of people relate to the back, but also the buttocks and the shoulders are also places that people hold a lot of tension. Loss of sleep as well is another one that people are bringing up as physical examples. Okay, let's look at behavioral signs and symptoms of stress. Can anyone give me some ways that their behavior might change when they're feeling stress? And again, let's have some of these in the chat. So we've got irritable. The first 2 that came up was irritability on some level or another. Short-tempered, snapping and shouting, loss of focus, not as patient as normal, lethargic. Let's actually look at. Let's think about, again, going back to the body's response. Can anyone think why you might be lethargic? Thinking back again about some of the physical responses to our body to stress. So we had um, um, the heartbeat going on, the liver, the skin and sweating, the muscles and tension, breath being different. Anyone think of any reason why we might feel lethargic? What part of the body's response to not digesting properly? Yes, not digesting properly. Self-preservation. So we're still getting responses to the behavioral. Can we think about, let's just choose irritability. Oh, sorry, lethargic was the one that Roz suggested. What from the body, the physical body responses, do you think might be causing lethargy? You feel tired, exhausted after experiencing all of those symptoms? Yes, you do. But also, if we're thinking back to the natural body's responses, if we are taking in, if we're breathing faster and shallower, we're not taking in enough oxygen into our body. Because we're not taking enough oxygen into our body, we're not replenishing our cells. We are not getting enough oxygen in, so we start to feel tired. So that's one of the reasons why you might be feeling tired or lethargic on an ongoing way when you're experiencing the sweats. Okay. Some people say that they feel a bit anxious. Anxiety came up quite a lot when we did the first brainstorming with that answer garden where we had the clouds. Now that anxiety again could be because our heart palpitations are still going. Yeah. So when our heart's pumping, and it's pumping quite fast because our stress response is going fast, that can start to build up anxiety. And over a long time, that can become quite something to hold and maintain. So that's why we can get some of that. Some people experience skin conditions like acne and spots when they're feeling quite stressful. And again, that's to do with the fact that we're not bringing in enough oxygen. That's to do with the fact that if we're constantly sweating, you know, we're building up grease and on our skin. Sometimes our skin's pores can become quite blocked. And so that can cause some of these skin irritations and condition. Let's go back to this slide and look at psychological signs and symptoms. And we've already got quite a few already in the chat. Again, going back, and we've got one here around self-preservation. The feeling that we need to kind of like preserve ourselves can sometimes make us go quite inwards. And if that happens over a period of time, it can tip into the feeling that a message that I am not safe. So I need to preserve myself and I will withdraw into myself to keep myself safe on the really far extent of that particular timeline. And then we've got emotional signs and symptoms of stress. And our caveman here again is reminding us that, you know, it's whatever he would have experienced in this modern age, we are still experiencing the same things. The only difference is our timeline and our experience on a day-to-day basis and our environment is very different, but our body's reaction is still the same. Can we take the next slide, please? So we've called the workshop Good, Bad and Ugly Stress because there are different types of stress. Can anyone give me an example in the chat of good stress? Let's have a look at some good stress in the chat. Yeah. Exercise, yes, is a good one. That can cause good stress, as you can see here. You know, this idea that your work in your body will increase your heart rate, will make you breathe a lot faster and shallower sometimes. It can, again, make you sweat. It will, because your heartbeat is beating more, the blood pumps through your system a lot more. Stress that makes you work hard before exams, absolutely right. And also, you know, good stress can be, you know, hanging out in the wings, waiting to go on stage, can be quite stressful. Oh, there you go. Some stage fright has just come up. Yeah, absolutely, that can be. Deadlines as well. You know, if you're working on a project that you're really feeling good about, you're really feeling excited about, you know, you're getting, you know, you're coming closer to the deadline, you focus a lot more. Adrenaline prior to deadline has just come up as we're talking about it. Absolutely right. These are all good examples of good stress. Now, what's good about it is when the good stress occurs when the perceived demands match our perceived ability to cope. So even if we know that this is a stressful situation that we're in, we know we can cope. So we feel good about it. Go, you know, packing to go on holidays. God, I hate doing it. It makes me feel so stressed. But I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be going to somewhere warm and relaxing. So that kind of stress, I don't mind. And the one important thing to remember about it again is we know we're going to experience this stress for a short period of time. But then at the end of that stressful experience, what happens to the body is it goes back to normal bodily function. So the stress response diminishes and we come back into an equilibrium with our body. So that's what good stress is. So again, some quick examples of a physical signs and symptoms of good stress is increased energy, stimulation, we're feeling productive, and we're feeling that we're about to achieve something really good. How our body might change or our behavior might change is we are able to clearly communicate with other people. We're feeling really creative and effective. We're able to concentrate really well, and we have a really clear clarity of thought. These are good symptoms of how we behave during a good stress experience. Psychologically, we're feeling really confident, we're feeling a positive attitude, we're feeling motivated, and we're feeling decisive. Emotionally, we're feeling happy, we're feeling content, we're feeling able to cope, we're feeling non judgmental, and we're feeling open and rational. So these are good signs and symptoms of good stress. Can we have the next slide, please? So, bad stress. Bad stress occurs when either the demands placed on us outweigh our perceived ability to cope, or our perceived ability to cope is outweighed by the demands placed on us. In other words, we might feel that the job is bigger than we can manage, or we might feel that our ability is not good enough to be able to manage the job or the demand in front of us. So, what might be some of the physical signs and symptoms of bad stress? We're feeling a decreased energy levels. We might be feeling some indigestion. Now, in terms of the indigestion, why might that be happening? That might be happening because, again, if you go back to what the body is doing during the stress response, what it's doing is it's slowing down our digestive system. Now, as with good stress, we know that when the good stress happens, or we finish the job or the demand that we're putting ourselves towards, working towards, we know that when that finishes, and it's a short period of time, we go back to the body's equilibrium. Now, the difference with bad stress is bad stress might come along and it hangs about for a while. So we're actually experiencing that stress for a longer period of time. So because we're experiencing it for a longer period of time, it means that our digestive system isn't functioning terribly well. And over a period of time, that will create indigestion, that will give you stomach aches because you're not digesting your food well. And that has a knock-on effect on some of your other organs and bodily functions. Another thing that happens again is our immune system gets slightly suppressed. So you might find that you're more prone towards colds and flus. You might find that you might be fidgeting a lot more again and sighing, and you might start taking on poor body posture because your muscles are tight, quite tight and tense over a long period of time. You might experience headaches because you've constantly got a strong flow of blood and a stuck energy, a flow of blood in our brains, in our minds. Some of the behavior that you might notice as a sign and symptom of bad stress is boredom or frustration. You might become less flexible in your attitude and in your mind. Your concentration levels tend to drop. You're starting to feel a little bit more fatigued, and you start using various types of stimulants to try and kickstart you back into a different way of being and thinking. Psychologically, you'll experience a lack of confidence. You might become a lot more forgetful. And again, you might start to feel a kind of urgency. And that's again because your heart rate is quite pumped up. So that makes you feel quite tense and anxious. Because again, when your muscles tense up, you become anxious and you're getting ready. You're almost feeling like I've got to fight or flight. Emotionally, the signs and symptoms could be lack of humor. You become impatient and irritable. Some of these have already come up in the chat. So you're all recognizing some of the triggers, and it's really important to help you manage these signs and symptoms, that you recognize what your triggers are. And also, if you're working with teams, you need to start recognizing what might be some of the triggers for your colleagues or your team as well. Okay, can somebody give me an example of bad stress? What might be an example of a bad stress? And let's use the chat again for this, please. It might be something that you've experienced before in the past. And again, you can use the, so opening a letter from the council. Yep. Working to an unrealistic deadline. Yes, that can be an example. New job with new skills. Absolutely great examples of bad stress. Because eventually, when you've opened that letter to the council, eventually you'll get to a place where you'll think, okay, I've seen the news now. I know what the news is. So then you can start putting plans of action in. The deadline will come and go. The thing is, again, to think about how do you manage deadlines in the future. Where is there, again, going back to the support, to the 6 key causes of stress at work, exploring again what the demands are, the control are, what support's in place to help you manage that. Maybe looking at your role. Is that deadline, or is it is that part of your role to be taking on all that work to manage that deadline? Waiting for test results again. Large workload with no support. All really good examples of bad stress. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? And now we come on to ugly stress. And the definition is when the demands far outweigh your perceived ability to cope. Now, again, looking back at timelines and stress, when we have ugly stress, you can almost be a bit like a scab, where you've got this scab and you keep itching it. And because you keep itching it, it doesn't go away. And the scab becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. And eventually, because it's been around for so long, you almost forget what happened in the first instance that allowed that scab to come into your body. And so ugly stress often is triggered by one incident. And because that incident is not resolved, more incidences come on top and on top and on top and on top and on top. And it becomes so overwhelming that it's difficult to even know sometimes how to begin to resolve it. Can we have some examples of ugly stress in the chat, please? Debt. Yes. Any other examples? Family illness. Absolutely. It's one of the top 5 stressors. Grief. Absolutely. Now, with grief, sometimes grief can actually be bad stress or it can be ugly stress. And the difference in where it lies and falls is what support systems you have in place to help you manage that stress. Also, the relationships around the person that has passed away are also another key factor to whether grief remains in the bad or the ugly section. Another ugly stress could be remaining in a job that you really do not like at all. It does not fuel your passion. That can become really ugly stress over a long period of time. If you're going into something that you really does not fuel you, you're not really feeling that you're able to meet deadlines again and again and again and again, it begins to knock your self-esteem and it has kind of like a domino effect. So let's look at the physical symptoms of ugly stress. Lethargy. Once you start getting ulcers, heart attacks, increased heart rate or constantly all the time, facial expressions of aggression and fear. Behavior could include anxiety, insomnia, reduction in your output. Remember that image of that zombified woman sitting there like that, staring into nothingness. That's a real good example of ugly stress. It can also impact your sex drive when you are feeling ugly stress. Psychological impacts could include fear, confusion, negative thought patterns, feeling helpless, and ongoing depression. Emotional impact could include hostility, nervousness, uncontrolled crying, violence, and hysteria. So you can see how by breaking your stressful experience down into 4 clear categories of their physical impact, the behavior that you then start enacting, your psychological impact, and the emotional impact. By breaking it down in that way, and then asking yourself, is it good, bad, or ugly stress? You know, you're really able to see where you are and how you're experiencing any given stressful episodes. Thank you. Can we have the next slide? So, what are your triggers? It's really, as I was saying, it's important to understand what your triggers are, because by knowing your triggers, you can use them as a kind of warning sign as to, oops, I'm going into a stressful episode here. That can be good, that can be bad, that can be ugly. And by kind of, you can almost like create a traffic light signal for yourself as to where you are with your stressful situation. So Miriam, I'm gonna ask you if you could pop in the chat, please, the answer garden link. Once Miriam's doing that, what I'd like you to do is, if you can all think of a recent stressful experience, and just take a minute to think about that. You can almost like run it as a movie in your head. Think about where were you, who was involved, how you reacted. I want you to think, where did you feel that stressful experience? Was it a psychological experience? Did it impact your behavior? Was it emotional? Where did you feel it in your body? And then I'd like you to add in the answer garden, what were your triggers? What was the trigger? Difficult conversations, particular people, uncertainty. Yeah, look at that, uncertainty is creeping up. People's expectations. And again, if you see something in the answer garden that you relate to, please type it back into the search, because it really gives us an idea what the things are people experiencing the most. We've also got work. We've got feeling out of control, difficult news. Yeah, work is creeping up again. You can see some of, the bigger ones, lack of control. Yeah. Yeah. I'll just do the last one just to see how we end up. Okay. So you can see again the differences of the types of triggers that people might experience. And they can be quite subtle sometimes. Sometimes you're not even aware. Underappreciated is a tiny one in there. And again, sometimes you might think something like that might remain small. But if you're experiencing that again and again and again, it really starts to lower your confidence, lower your sense of self-esteem. It can also make you start to feel resentful. It can also impact the way that you decide you're going to function in the workplace. For example, it might make you think, well, nobody values what I'm going to do, what I'm doing. I'm not going to do, not going to keep on doing the work that I'm doing because it's not really valued. I might reduce the way that I kind of volunteer my time for certain situations. So it can really, something as tiny as that can have a massive impact on your stress experiences, as well as the environment and the people that you're working with in your team. So never underestimate the small things, because they can have a massive impact on how we manage things. Okay, so let's just move on to the next slide, please. Now, this is one of the most important things that I always say to people that will help with managing stress. And again, we said it right at the beginning, what we find stressful today, we're not necessarily going to find stressful tomorrow. What works for us today to manage a stressful situation isn't necessarily going to be what works for us in the next day. So you almost want to imagine that you're going to create this little tool bag that you're going to be carrying around with you internally to manage different stressful situations. And again, I want to break it down in these kind of like 4 different areas of tools that you could build to help you manage a stressful situation. So can we have a quick brainstorm some physical tools that you think might be useful in the chat? Exercise, yeah. Yoga, that's a different type of exercise. Yoga is pretty good because it does help to kind of like lower our stress response. Fresh air, absolutely. Taking time to breathe. And unfortunately, the breathing thing is so key, because in this modern world, we just actually, I'm going to get you all to just stop for a minute and just notice your breath. And when you're noticing your breath, I don't want you to change it. Just notice how, when you breathe in, how far down in your body is that oxygen that you're taking in? How far down is it actually going into your body? Now, most of the time, we tend to breathe up to our chest. But when we do that, we're not bringing the full amount of oxygen in our body that we really need to function well. So I'm going to invite you to just take a minute to just be with your breath and see what happens to your body when you allow that breath that you inhale to go all the way down to your stomach. And as you breathe, just notice on your in-breath, if your stomach is expanding, that's a good in-breath. So we breathe in through our nose, and you want to breathe out through your mouth. And breathing out through our mouth actually really increases the power of your in-breath. Anyone notice any difference? Again, any comments in the chat, please? As we're not able to see your lovely faces and hear your lovely voices today through this webinar. Did anyone notice any difference to their breath when they just took time to breathe a little bit deeper? And if you experience kind of lethargy, lack of concentration, it's a really good one to do, just to take a minute to slow down. Sharon says it makes you slow down for a moment, and it certainly does. It really helps you to slow down. It makes the body feel looser. Yeah. Okay. So some of the other things that you can do to help improve your physical symptoms to stress is reducing your caffeine intake and other stimulants, because caffeine tends to trigger the adrenaline and the fight and flight response within our body. um, Taking a relaxing bath. I mean, we're so busy nowadays. So most people tend to use showers, but actually taking a 10-minute bath is a brilliant way of slowing right down. And it's great for your muscles as well, because it gives your muscles the opportunity to relax. Putting some sea salts into that bath, really, really good again for the muscles. And maybe even lighting a candle once you're in there. Doesn't cost a penny, apart from the cost of the sea salt and your water bill at the end of the month. But there are lots of cheap and cheerful things that you can do to help manage your physical reaction to stress. One of the other things, again, particularly if you're finding that you're sitting at a computer all day, is to really check your how you're related to your computer. And again, if you go on to the Health and Safety Executive website, there are examples of how you can adjust your desk area to make it much more comfortable, to lower the impact of bad posture. Okay, so let's look at what are some of the things that we can put in our tool bag for behavior, managing our behavior during stressful situations. And again, let's have some suggestions in the chat, please. Smile. God, yes. How amazing is that? It's just a smile. Smile at somebody else who's really looking frowned. I think, there are parts of the world of England even. I mean, in London, somebody smiling at you on the tube, sometimes you think, oh my God, what have I done? Have I got something on my face? But when you go out of London, people regularly say hello to you and smile at you. It makes a huge difference. Take time to listen to people, to others, and to put your stress in perspective. Absolutely. One of the things, again, I would say is plan, plan, plan. Create schedules that help you to manage your time well. We had debt earlier in the chat as bad experience of stress. Try and save 10% of your income a month. 10, or even get yourself a penny jar and stick the odd pennies in there every now and then, or £2 coin. Put some money aside to help manage your debt and to actually be able to save up for something good that you're really going to enjoy. Treat others the way you expect to be treated is another thing to really pay attention to. So some of the emotional signs and symptoms that tools that we can use is you could create a journal. So you can take some of those thoughts that are whirling around in your mind or making you feel a particular way. Creating a journal is a really good thing. Do at least one thing a week just for you. Doesn't mean you have to go on some amazing pamper trip. It could just be staying at home and not, staying at home and giving yourself a pamper session at home. It could be treating yourself to something that red dress that you've always wanted, or those new pair of shoes. Just do something just for you. Be open to other people's opinions. And another key thing is nurture relationships, because they build support systems and people who understand you. Holding grudges creates tension, and it also is an emotional drain. So learn to forgive. Another tool in your psychological bag is consciously start and end your working day. In my studio, where I work from at home, I have a little area where I have affirmations. And at the beginning of my working day, I'll just stand at that space and do some affirmations. And when I finish at the end of the day, I'll kind of like smudge or put nice incense in my room to kind of clear that space. Now, not everybody works from home and is able to do that. If you're working in a busy workspace, you could have one little object on your desk that you know makes you feel good. And you can use that at different points of the day to say, okay, I'm tuning into this one object that's going to support me during my working day. And when you're finished at the end of the day, you tune out from that. Or you can just do a quick brushing the day off. At the end of the day, you can go into the toilets to do it. Everyone doesn't have to know what you're up to. You can go into the toilets. Or if you've got steps in your building, when you're going out of the office, or your workplace, each step that you take down, you can say in your mind, I am finishing my working day, I'm leaving work behind, so that by the time you get home, you're not bringing all your stress from the day back home, and the people around you are all suffering because you had a shit day at work. Another thing, again, is to ask clarifying questions to avoid any misunderstandings. So there's a whole range of tools, and I would suggest that you get yourself, you could actually create a sheet of paper, divide it into 4, puts physical, behavior, emotional, and psychological on them, and create things that you can learn to do to support you when you're experiencing a stressful situation. Okay, can we go on to the next slide, please? Resources. Resources that will help you to feel calm is your tool bag. But I'm also going to show you some other resources that you can follow up on. So we can take the next slide. And there's quite a few here. And really, I mean, the key thing, what I'll say, I've got loads of suggestions here. But the key thing is the Health and Safety Executive website is brilliant. They have loads of tools there. If you put HSE stress management into a search engine, you will find lots of resources that you can use. Again, key things as well is to look out for industry bodies or unions or theatre companies. And because of the impact of an increase of stress that we've had over the last year due to Corona, people are becoming more and more aware of well-being and offering a lot more resources and support around well-being, personal as well as professional well-being. And you've got a list here. They've got amazing resources. Even I know SOLT in UK have got an amazing resource list. Inc. Arts, for those of you who don't know, are an incredible organisation working around diversity and inclusion. And they also currently have a project where people from the Black and ethnic minority groups can explore different resources and get support as well, counselling support. Stage Sight is another amazing organisation, again, doing incredible work around inclusion and diversity. They have various different resources, and they also run a green room. And then again, you've got the Theatre Helpline and various other organisations on that list there. So can we go to the next slide, please? So takeaway, if you cannot remember anything I've said to you today, try and just think of a tool bag. The next time you feel stressed, just close your eyes and visualize a tool bag and ask yourself, what's making me stressed? Yeah, in that tool bag. Try and remember to plan ahead. Prioritize your self-care. Learn to identify your stress triggers, because by identifying them, it helps you to begin to think, what tool shall I pull out of that bag today? Remember that not all stress is bad. And please do, join the Quest Life mailing list on our website. And if you put in SOLT in there, you'll be able to get all kinds of amazing in further resources around stress and well-being. Let's move to the final stage. So I just want to say thank you for listening, and we're going to move over to question and answer.
Thank you so much, Eileen. What a great talk. And I think what was really nice is starting off with the scary stuff, wasn't it? And sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's things that in normal times people probably experience on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, some of the things that you were covering, things like uncertainty, lack of control, a lot of things you were touching on. I was thinking, boy, I mean, talk about sort of the ugly period we've just had. I think everything's been, exacerbated 100 times. So I'm sure there's a lot of resonance there, and obviously some of the things that people putting in the chat were sort of, I think people really they could identify with what you're talking about, the sort of that framework. And I think it's great having that framework, because as you've talked about, actually being able to identify it is almost the first sign, isn't it? Being able to be self-aware enough to go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm experiencing, bad stress, ugly stress, or good stress. The sort of, it's like being aware enough to know, okay, this is something I'm going through. I don't need to let it affect me. I can sort of acknowledge what it is. And some great sort of practical things in your tool bag, as you've mentioned. So rather than me keep talking, just to say to everyone, we've got a few minutes for Q&A. So there's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. So if you just click on that, you can ask a question as yourself, or you can ask it anonymously. Either is fine. It's all cool. We only got a few minutes. What tends to happen is they're a bit scared at first, and then they hear someone else ask a question, they go, oh yeah, no, I've got a question, and then suddenly there's a flood, then we have to end it. So do use this opportunity to take the most of to make the most of having Eileen with us. And obviously if you're watching this as a recording, you can't ask the questions, so we're relying on everyone in the room to ask those juicy questions. So we'll just give everyone a minute or two. And I suppose that just a reflection from me, Eileen, I think some of the sort of the tool bag ideas that you gave, I think breathing is so key. I mean, I've been in personal situations when I've suddenly become aware my breathing's really bad, and also as a manager, I've seen it in other people and have often used, given feedback to people to say, are you aware of what I'm seeing is your breathing's quite light at the minute. And it's such a powerful thing, almost more than anything, because you think obviously we're doing it all the time, but it feels a bit undervalued perhaps. And also more than anything, it's free. The thing that we have to do to sort of make that change is the awareness, and also not be afraid to say, whatever setting we're in, I'm just going to need a minute. I just need to take a breath. Whether you're in a meeting, whether you're just doing some work sitting at your desk, it's free, it's available anytime. And it's so powerful. It's so powerful. I think we underestimate the importance of it sometimes.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think we often think that we have to spend a lot of money to manage our stress, or go somewhere else to manage our stress. But we don't. We can just be with ourselves in that moment, acknowledging it. I am going through a stressful situation, or I can feel I'm sweating, or I can feel my heart beating a little bit faster. Step out. We think we have to stay in front of our computers all day. Take time and step out. Somebody said it. Go and get some fresh air. It can clear our minds, replenish our eyes so that we come back again. I can see we've got a question in. Questions are coming in. Do you have any advice on how to communicate that you are experiencing stress at work to your managers without it coming across as a critique of the management style? I think use your appraisals. You know, for those of you who have it, use your appraisal system. Think to yourself again, okay, in your team meetings, think to yourself, well, what is it about how are the team meetings actually currently being utilized, and is that a safe place for me to be able to bring up some of my concerns? If it doesn't feel like a safe place, then ask yourself another question: why doesn't it feel safe? So it's almost like you're excavating and digging a little bit deeper, because when you start digging a little bit deeper, you might understand, oh, it might be this reason. And so therefore, because you know it's this reason, it allows you to formulate, find the right opportunity to actually think, how can I best put this to my manager without it being something? Is it better for me to do a one-to-one with that person? Is it better to send an email to that person? You know, so that you still feel empowered to bring it up as an issue.
And sometimes as well, Eileen, it's that thing of, it's not bringing it up isn't a criticism. Sometimes it's just sort of saying, oh, I'm experiencing this, I'm feeling this when you're talking to me in a certain way. Because what you're doing is you're not criticizing the way they're doing it. You're just saying, when are you aware that when you talk to me in a certain way, I'm feeling like this? Because if we're talking about our personal feelings, you know, that's just an honest sort of comment, an honest observation. We've got a couple of other great questions here. I think the next one about freelancers is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look. The next question. How do you make yourself value taking time to access your toolkit when stress makes you feel like you have no time? I'm going to put my hands up. How many people can put their hands up on that one? Yes, being a freelancer is really tough, because in a way you are in control. You're the one in control of how and where you do the work so often, and also when you do it. But what you have to do is, again, like one of the things again in the toolbox could be the planning. How well do you plan for that particular job? Taking time out can sometimes feel difficult, but when you do it and you come back, boy, are you more able to think more clearly. Taking the break also allows you to come back and think about a different perspective, a different way of managing that situation. I think also the thing about self-worth, valuing yourself. As I said, you know, I have a system of making sure I start the day clearly and finish the day clearly to help me manage my working pattern. Sometimes you're in other people's working environments. Again, you need to think about, if you're going to be working in an environment over a period of time, check it out. Go and check out the space. Check out the team that you'll be working with. You know, in your contracts, you might be able to negotiate what's important for you to be able to do the job well. So really, again, it's just like, again, thinking about, what do I value for myself and what's going to be important for me to be able to manage that job well.
Thanks, Eileen. I'm just looking at time. I know we started a little late, but I'm also mindful of you know what it's like with the Zoom culture. People have to rush off. So I think we might need to wrap it up there, I'm afraid. But what I'm going to do in a second is give your details. I know you've given your website, so I'm just going to let people know about ways in which they can contact you, because I think there's a lot of really great ideas and issues that you've raised that people might want to be following up with you. So there are different ways of people getting in touch with you. We've got your website, which you mentioned, questlife.co.uk. There's your Twitter, so questlife2, number 2. There's your Insta, Questlife Arts and Culture. Facebook is facebook.com/lifeinspiredquest. And then your email is questlife@questlife.co.uk. So lots of ways to get in touch there. Just to say thanks again to everyone who's bought a ticket. Thank you to everyone for attending. And also just a reminder to everyone who's attended that we'll be circulating this afterwards, so you'll get a lot of the great information that Eileen's put in the slides. And this, along with other archive recordings, will be available on theatremeansbusiness.info in the coming weeks. Thank you again to our sponsors, Ecclesiastical, Spectrix, Theatre Tokens and Tizers for their support. And also a reminder that if you're watching this as a recording, it'd be great if you could support the Theatre Artists Fund. You can support them at theatreartists.fund/donate. Also, just let you know, just to do look out for a follow-up email survey that we'll send out. It's only got a few questions in it. It's very quick. It's a really useful way of us being able to just assess how the session was for you. I mean, obviously there was some great interaction there, so I could see that it was really something that's resonating with people, but it's really useful for Eileen and ourselves just to give us some feedback and make sure that what we're providing is a valuable service and also helps us plan future sessions. So, and then just a final thing, I think hopefully you can see on the screen, more theatremeansbusiness.info wellbeing and mental health webinars coming up. We've got one on Wednesday the 12th, which is the next one, which is with Laura White, and that's about ways to wellness. Monday the 17th of May, so that's a week on Monday, we've got creating an organizational resilience checklist with Lou Platt and Rachel Bagshaw. And then on Monday 24th of May, staying resilient in uncertain times with Lily Stout. And all of these you can book and find out more at theatremeansbusiness.info. So that's it from me, and it just leaves me to say thank you, a huge thank you to Eileen Bellot for a fantastic session. I think there's a lot of really useful takeaways there for everyone, particularly in these really tough times. And also, you know, we are coming through, we're coming into a recovery period, but there's a lot of sort of residual stress, I'm sure. So I think having that tool bag will really help people as they navigate their way through the future. So thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.